Hello, this is a Who is Responsible film in reference to a ditch which was dug alongside the Wey Navigation in the 1630s. The ditch was designed to be the midway overflow of the Wey Navigation to maintain the level of the navigation between Stoke Lock and Bowers Lock and provide normal day-to-day controlled overspill into the floodplain of the Wey Navigation, as well as clearing floodwaters away from the south side floodplain and local springs in this area prior to the construction of the A3 Burpham-Guildford bypass in 1980. The lake in Riverside Nature Reserve was dug in the early 1980s during the time of the Burpham and Guildford bypass, later designated SANG, Suitable Alternative Natural Green Space. The median height of this lake surface was deemed to be 90 feet above sea level, that is 27.5 metres, with an expected variation of 20 inches, approximately half a metre, up and down, assessed during the planning process. This measurement was stated in respect of the marshland and lake, but not the navigation. The floodplain, marshland to the south of the river, was reconstructed such that the area formed a new hill, a new lake and marshland now known as the Sang. The marshland, which is a size of approximately 11 acres or 4.5 hectares, has been cleared at least twice in the last 15 to 20 years at some considerable cost by Guildford Borough Council, cleared of self-seeding willows, but their roots have left in place, thus will regenerate again. In the meantime, their water take-up ability is greatly reduced, causing more flooding downstream of this area. The water from this marshland and lake is then channeled through a series of pre-1930 man-made ditches, some over 3 feet deep, into a funnel-shaped piece of land covered in willows of area 1.5 acres. Then on down the side of the river into an area of half an acre, and then into an area of 1 acre stretched before entering the 1630s ditch proper, meaning unless the ditch is running free, the water is funneled into an ever-reducing area and nowhere to go except the towpath into the navigation, if it is running lower than the ditch. Else, the navigation overflows into the already flooded ditch. Along the length of the true ditch, it drops some 5 feet into a pipe under the navigation at Old Bucks Weir, exiting below the Weir gates. Now, land ownership in this area is again historical and interesting. The Sang is the responsibility of Guildford Borough Council and other sections, arguably between the National Trust, who own the navigation, the water bit, plus 6 feet of the towpath, which is now in places been washed away due to high flow rate, meaning the old pollarded willows, while within 6 feet of the navigation, are claimed to be in ownership of the council, not the trust. This situation is caused by poor river management, running the river too fast and failing to understand the Harstrom curve. Guildford Borough Council, who own the Sang and own the freehold of the allotments at Bowers Lane, has leased this land to the Guildford Allotment Society, who are then allegedly responsible for the maintenance of this ditch up to halfway across its width, presuming a derogation of land ownership duty by the council, who consider this 1630 ditch as a recognised river with riparian ownerships attached. A ditch is normally inside the land ownership of one landowner, with its outer edge providing the legal boundary. Reference Vowles versus Miller in 1810. But in this case it cannot apply, as currently presented by all parties, because the ditch alongside the allotments is part of the water function of the Wey Navigation level control as installed in the 1630s, albeit greatly changed further upstream. Thus is the responsibility of the National Trust, not the council or the allotments. Further, inside the nature reserve, the drainage ditches are multifunction, thus are the landowner's responsibility. So the freehold of the land on both sides of the navigation within this section appears to be in the ownership of Guildford Borough Council, while the water plus 6 feet to the towpath side is responsibility of the National Trust. Money comes in for the maintenance of the Sang, but none for the funnels of the watercourse emanating in the block ditch downriver of the cleared area. Meanwhile, the ditch, based on the claims of all parties, is principally a joint responsibility of the National Trust and the Allotment Society. The area of the Sang, when flooded, is feeding water into the area, which is unmaintained, still in the control of Guildford Borough Council, down across an area which is also in control of Guildford Borough. There are several large fallen, cracked willow trees in this ditch by the allotments, which is causing the water to back up into the unmaintained area between the ditch and the Sang. Thus, the actual draining action of this ditch from 1630 has ceased to function correctly. This has been highlighted several times over the past years at flood forum meetings because of the fact that when the trees, the cracked willows, along this area, when they have fallen down, have simply been logged or shredded with no consideration to the actual water flow in the ditch and its function, while the allotment holders have used the bank as a dump for any tree prunings on their side of the ditch. The failure of understanding that this ditch function has effectively been interrupted means that further upstream, where the water cannot get past blockages within the drainage system and the triangular funnel area of drainage, the water has risen above its design confines within the nature reserve and come across the towpath, the responsibility of the National Trust, cutting slots into the towpath going back into the river, thus undermining the integrity of the towpath in multiple locations. In the meantime, on the north bank of the Wey Navigation, there is a flood area above Old Bucks Weir highlighted adjacent the Oxbow in the 1930s. Logically assessed, the level of the towpath should be higher than the embankment to the north side floodplain, thus keeping the navigation in a working state for barges during flooding. This area of 12.7 acres of floodplain is simply ineffective. It is in effect not used for the purpose of nature intended. Thus, 25,778 cubic metres of floodwater storage is not being used during times of flood. In reality, the level of the floodplain on the towpath side has now become lower than the level on the floodplain side. This means that the floodplain is in effect the area of the towpath southeast of the river, not the floodplain to the northwest. The floodplain is not being used and the flood is actually coming across the towpath, which it was never designed to do. The Environment Agency has no understanding of the functions of the River Wey as converted into a navigation, thus making incorrect decisions on maintenance, flow speeds and navigational heights. The Wey Navigation and river intertwine like ivy up a tree, sometimes controlled and confined in a depth and speed, and other sections naturally flowing. The practice of running water at 90 degrees at 8 knots is, I hope, finally being accepted after the Tumble Weir or Millmead Weir, where it was washed away by the same action of running the river too fast and turning it at 90 degrees, resulting in natural undermining of the weir. Sadly, we are still in the situation where the weir gates at Bowes Lock are being opened far too high and for far too long a period because there is no automatic flow or level controls installed during its refurbishment in 2019. A very poor decision on cost saving considering the normal location of staff to operate manual controls and considering the simple automatic mechanical level controls available to be viewed on the Kennet and Avon, which have been installed since the 18th-19th century. This simple mechanism automatically controls the canal level compared to the river and prevents erosion being experienced on the Wey Navigation. Somebody needs to take responsibility for this whole area because we are now in a situation where they are trying to overspeed the water through Guildford, which is contained by metal pilings, while not maintaining below it and thus speeding the river below it. The damage can be seen downstream of Bowes Lock to Broad Oak at the entrance to Sutton Place. There is severe erosion occurring in these areas as well, but has not been put on photographic record over the past 15 years. All of the photographs and videos have been taken within that period and prior erosion rate is unknown, noting that the fact that the width of the original navigation was 14 yards wide in 1630 and remained that width until 2000 and the time of the court case by the farmer as to who was responsible for the river floodplain. Now we are in a situation where in the last 20 years it has grown to 18 metres wide. Somebody needs to take responsibility before the trees that are left are simply washed into the river. The towpath ceases to exist and the whole area is devastated at the next flood event, having lost 20 of the 150 trees between Stoke Lock and Bowes Lock in the past 4 or so years. Please get your acts together and realise someone must be made in overall control of the Wey Navigation flood control and general maintenance. Currently, on a practical level, all parties are abdicating their responsibilities. Guildford for failing to realise clearing upstream causes problems downstream in the nature reserve, the National Trust for trying to drain the swamp while failing to realise the drain is blocked, and the Environment Agency for failing to get a grip with the difference between river navigation and canal. They are all different beasts.